The Volcorian Empire had ruled the Andromeda sector for 12,000 years. Their civilization stretched across 900 star systems, and their fleets numbered in the millions. When their scouts first detected the small human colony ship entering their territory, they laughed. These primitive creatures from a backwater galaxy dared to approach the greatest empire in known space. Ambassador Helena Cross stood in the grand reception hall of the Volcorian throne world. She wore her best diplomatic uniform and carried the official documents of first contact. Behind her stood 3 other human diplomats, all of them nervous but determined. They had traveled 18 months through deep space to reach this moment. The Volcorian High Council sat on elevated platforms above her. Their reptilian eyes looked down at the humans with a mixture of amusement and disgust. Supreme Chancellor Vorduk, the leader of the council, did not even rise from his seat when Helena approached. Helena bowed respectfully and began her speech. She spoke of peace between their civilizations. She talked about trade and cultural exchange. She offered friendship and cooperation. Her words were carefully chosen, and her tone was humble. Earth had sent her because she was their best diplomat, a woman who had negotiated peace treaties between warring nations back home. Vorduk listened for exactly 47 seconds before raising his clawed hand to silence her. His scales shifted from dark blue to bright red, a sign of contempt in their culture. The Supreme Chancellor spoke in a voice that echoed through the massive hall. He called humans inferior creatures. He said they were nothing but insects crawling from a dying planet. He mocked their small ships and primitive technology. He told Helena that the Volcorian Empire did not negotiate with species they considered lesser beings. Helena tried to speak again. She attempted to explain that humans came in peace, that they only wanted to establish diplomatic relations. But Vorduk ordered his guards to remove the human delegation from the throne world immediately. The guards grabbed Helena and her colleagues roughly, dragging them through the corridors like criminals. As they threw her onto the transport ship, one of the Volcorian guards spat at her feet. He told her to go back to her primitive world and never return. He said that if any human ship entered Volcorian space again, it would be destroyed without warning. Helena returned to Earth 3 months later. She stood before the United Nations Assembly and delivered her report. Her voice was calm and professional, but everyone could see the anger burning in her eyes. She described how the Volcorians had treated them, how they had dismissed humanity without even listening to their proposals. The assembly fell silent when she finished. Several minutes, no one spoke. Then Fleet Admiral Marcus Chan stood up from his seat. His face was stone cold, and his voice was steady when he addressed the assembly. Admiral Chun said that humanity had extended its hand in friendship and received nothing but insults. He stated that their diplomats had been treated worse than animals. He declared that such disrespect could not go unanswered. The admiral proposed a simple solution. Since the Volcorians refused to meet their diplomats, perhaps they would be more willing to meet their warships. The vote took only 15 minutes. The United Nations Assembly approved military action by an overwhelming majority. For the first time in human history, Earth's scattered colonies united under a single military command. The Imperial fleet was born that day. 6 months later, the largest human armada ever assembled gathered at the edge of Volcorian space. 3,000 warships hung in the darkness between stars. Battleships the size of small moons floated alongside carrier vessels packed with fighter craft. Support ships carried enough supplies and ammunition to sustain a war that could last decades. Admiral Chun stood on the bridge of the flagship Destiny. He looked at the tactical display, showing the first Volcorian system ahead. Intelligence reports indicated a defense fleet of approximately 500 ships guarding the outer colonies. The admiral opened a communication channel to the entire fleet. His voice was calm but carried the weight of humanity's wounded pride. He told his soldiers that they had come seeking peace and found only arrogance. He explained that they had offered friendship and received only contempt. He declared that today, the galaxy would learn an important lesson about humanity. Those who dismiss human diplomats would have to deal with human warriors instead. The Imperial fleet jumped into the Valkyrian system like a tidal wave of fire and steel. The Valkyrian defense fleet scrambled to respond, that they were hopelessly outnumbered. Human ships moved with precision and coordination that surprised the enemy commanders. Within 4 hours, the entire defense fleet was destroyed. News of the defeat reached the Valkyrian throne world within days. Supreme Chancellor Vortic refused to believe the reports at first. He demanded confirmation, thinking there must be some mistake. How could primitive humans defeat Valkyrian warships? It was impossible. But more reports came in, each one worse than the last. Human forces were advancing through Valkyrian space at an alarming rate. System after system fell before the Imperial fleet. Colonies that had stood for thousands of years were conquered in single days. Vortic gathered his military advisors and demanded an explanation. His generals told him things he did not want to hear. They explained that humans fought differently than any species the Valkyrians had encountered before. Human ships were not as advanced, but their tactics were unpredictable and devastating. Human soldiers did not retreat when faced with overwhelming odds. Instead, they fought harder. The generals also spoke of something else, something that worried them deeply. Human ships contained weapons that should not exist in such a young civilization. Plasma cannons that could tear through Valkyrian shields like paper. Missiles that tracked their targets across thousands of kilometers. Armor plating that could withstand direct hits from Valkyrian main batteries. One general finally voiced what everyone was thinking. He said that the Valkyrians had made a terrible mistake. They had assumed humans were primitive because their civilization was young. They had not considered that humans might have evolved differently, might have developed in ways that made them naturally suited for warfare. The general concluded that humans were not inferior. They were simply different. And in war, they were proving to be terrifyingly effective. Admiral Chen led his fleet deeper into Valkyrian territory. Each victory brought more resources and more intelligence about enemy positions. Human forces adapted and improved with every battle. They studied Valkyrian tactics and found weaknesses to exploit. They captured enemy technology and reverse-engineered it within weeks. The war lasted 3 years. During that time, the Imperial fleet conquered 400 Valkyrian systems. Human casualties were high, but reinforcements kept coming from Earth and the colonies. New ships were built faster than old ones were destroyed. Human factories worked around the clock, producing weapons and equipment at rates the Valkyrians could not match. On the day the Imperial fleet entered the Valkyrian home system, Supreme Chancellor Vortic finally understood his error. He had dismissed the human diplomats because he thought humans were weak. He had refused to listen because he believed his empire was invincible. Now he watched from his throne room as thousands of human warships surrounded his world. Admiral Chen sent a single message to the throne world. He told Vortic that the humans had returned. This time, they had not brought diplomats. They had brought their answer to Valkyrian arrogance. Vortic had 2 choices. He could surrender and accept human terms, or he could watch his entire civilization burn. The Supreme Chancellor, who had once mocked humans as insects, now faced the complete destruction of everything his ancestors had built. The surrender ceremony took place in the same grand reception hall where Helena Cross had been humiliated 3 years earlier. This time, Vortic stood at the bottom of the stairs while Admiral Chen and Ambassador Cross looked down at him from the elevated platform. Helena spoke first. Her voice was calm and professional, just as it had been during her first visit. But now she spoke from a position of absolute power. She told Vortic that humanity had not wanted war. She reminded him that they had come seeking friendship and cooperation. She explained that the destruction of his empire was entirely his own fault. The terms of surrender were harsh but fair. The Valkyrian Empire would become a protectorate of the Human Federation. They would pay reparations for the insult to human diplomats. They would open their borders to human trade and settlement. Most importantly, they would never again dismiss any species seeking diplomatic contact. Vorduk signed the surrender documents with trembling hands. His scales had turned pale gray, the color of deep shame in his culture. He had brought his mighty empire to its knees through nothing more than arrogance and pride. As Helena and Admiral Chun left the throne world, they passed the same corridor where Valkyrian guards had once dragged her like a criminal. Now those guards stood at attention, their eyes fixed on the floor, afraid to even look at the human conquerors. The war changed humanity forever. Before the conflict, Earth colonies had been scattered and divided. Now they stood united under a single government, protected by the most powerful military force in the known galaxy. Other alien civilizations watched what happened to the Valkyrians and learned an important lesson. Humans preferred peace. They genuinely wanted to make friends and build alliances. Their diplomats were patient and reasonable, willing to negotiate in good faith. But if you dismissed their diplomats, if you insulted their honor and refused to treat them with respect, you would face the alternative. The Imperial fleet became legend across the galaxy. Stories spread about the humans who had conquered an empire that had stood for 12,000 years. Other civilizations began seeking human friendship, eager to be allies rather than enemies. Helena Cross went on to become the first president of the Human Federation. She never forgot the humiliation she had suffered in that throne room, but she also never let it make her cruel. She ensured that human diplomats always treated other species with the respect that the Valkyrians had denied her. Admiral Chun retired after the war and spent his remaining years writing books about military strategy. He always emphasized the same point in every lecture and every book. War should be the last option, never the first. But when war becomes necessary, it must be fought with absolute determination and overwhelming force. The Valkyrian species eventually recovered from their defeat. Over centuries, they proved themselves worthy of trust and even became valuable allies of the Human Federation. But they never forgot the lesson they had learned. Their history books contained a new chapter, one that warned future generations about the dangers of underestimating other species. The chapter was titled simply, "Never Dismiss Human Diplomats." Across the galaxy, in thousands of alien civilizations, similar warnings were added to diplomatic protocols. When human ships appeared in your territory, you greeted them with respect. When human ambassadors requested an audience, you listened to what they had to say, because the alternative to dealing with human diplomats was dealing with human warriors. And that was an alternative that no wise civilization ever wanted to face.